Are you a generous person? Do you know people that are extremely generous? What makes them generous? What makes you generous? Well, this morning, that's what we're going to be diving in as we are continuing our daily Bible reading, Bible in a Year, in the book of 2 Corinthians. We are in chapter 8. Good morning. My name is Monica Schneider, and I'm a pastor at Valley Christian Center. Hello, Pam. Hello, Jamie. Hello, everybody else jumping in. Good to have you with us this morning as we're continuing reading the Bible in a Year, our 747 morning inspiration. But we are talking about being generous givers and what it means to be generous in this book of 2 Corinthians chapter 8. So if you'll remember, yesterday we were in 7, and we have remembered from yesterday's reading that confidence has been restored in the church of Corinth to Paul. There was some shaky ground there. Good morning, Deborah. But everything has been brought back into confidence to Paul of the church in Corinth. Hello, John. Hello again. And now Paul is getting into addressing a relief fund for the church in Jerusalem. So kind of like the mother church. At this time, Paul has been traveling around to the churches in Macedonia, in the northern region, and he had been taking up a collection and offering from the churches to bring back to this mother church in Jerusalem. They had been going through a financial trouble at the time due to like the split of Judaism and the new converts that had been coming in. And because of these new converts and what was kind of happening of the split of everything going on, a lot of them had lost jobs and were really just in distress. And so Paul saw this need and said, I'm going to reach out to all the churches that are being planted all over, and I'm going to take an offering to be able to bring back to help the poor and the needy that are happening within this church. So this is what's happening. And so Paul is encouraging the churches to give of an offering to be able to take back to help their sister church that's in need. But he also gives us, just in this chapter 8, it's going to flow into chapter 9 with us tomorrow too, but he gives us some practical instructions that kind of rub with some spiritual practices in these chapters, reminding us that followers of Jesus, that believers of Jesus, that our way of giving, that generosity is out of the love and the response of the self-giving that Christ gave for us, the very sacrificial self-giving that Christ did for us. And so we don't really need to have like an urging or a crazy need to happen for us to want to give cheerfully and in abundance and to be generous with what the Lord has blessed us with, whether that's financial, whether that's an ability and a talent, whatever it is, a business that can help another, whatever that is. We are called as followers of Jesus to be generous people. And it's not difficult for us because of the love and grace that was poured on us because of Jesus. And so that's where Paul is coming out today and speaking with the Corinthian church. And so I wanted to give us, out of the verses today, 4 qualities of generosity that we're going to read in Scripture. And so the first one that I want to point out is that the first quality of generosity is that generosity is a signal. So if we read in verse 1, it reads, I'm reading an NLT this morning, not sure what translation you're reading in, but that's what I'm in this morning. And it says, now I want you to know, dear brothers and sisters, what God in his kindness, or other translations say grace, has done through the churches in Macedonia. They are being tested by many troubles, and they are very poor, but they are also filled with the abundant joy which has overflowed in rich generosity. So generosity is a signal. If you've met any person that is extremely generous, whether it's financially, with a business, gifts, talents that they have, and it's never a question and they just easily and freely give, I would tell you that 99% out of 100, it is because the generosity that is flowing from their heart is because either they've received something in return, as far as there was something great done for them, and they feel the inclining to want to do that and give back. So it is a response to something that has been done within our hearts that we say, I want to help in that, I want to do something in that. So it is a signal of the work that's being done in us, right? This word grace, or in my translation, it says kindness, but we see that kind of woven through chapter 8 multiple times. We see it at the beginning. We see it later in like verse 7. 8 mentions love, and then again grace in verse 9, and it kind of weaves itself through. But we all know that what grace is. Grace is what? Unmerited favor. And by whose grace? It's by God's grace, right? So here it's showing that favor is based on the favor that was received. So the Macedonian church is going through struggle. They're going through hardship at this time. But they don't say it's because of anything else other than what God in his kindness or what God in his grace has done for them. And the Macedonian church was definitely struggling at this time. But again, that generosity is a signal. What they're choosing to do and being, it says right here, abundant with joy, they're not begrudgingly giving, they're happy about it, has overflowed into a rich generosity. So reminding us that generosity is the proof that God has been working in us, working in the grace in us, in a person's heart to transform us to be extremely generous people and to be happy about it. We know in scripture later what it says, that the Lord loves what? A cheerful giver, right? All right, so moving on through scripture. Number 2 of a quality of generosity is that generosity is sacrificial. I just read to you in verse 2 that it says the Macedonian church was being tested by many troubles and they were very poor. Some translations even say that it's like deep poverty, or instead of the word being tested by many trials, like in affliction. So we're thinking trials, we're thinking many troubles. And what was happening in the Macedonian church was that the culture was literally like squeezing them because of their faith. Most of them had lost their jobs. So they were in a struggling place. Can anybody identify with being in a struggle financially? Here we go. And so this church was in a struggle because of their faith and what was happening. And so Paul comes to them, right? He's on this journey collecting from the churches the offerings that they're giving to take to Jerusalem. He gets to Macedonia, actually. He gets there and realizes they're in too bad a shape. Like, I can't take an offering from them. They're already struggling. They're already hitting it hard. But they do something really, really amazing. And I'll hit it with the next point, but they do something really amazing. And they actually urge to give without Paul even asking for them to give, because once he gets there, he recognizes what's happening in the church. And he's like, okay, well, we'll just take a shift. But they actually surprise him in their response. And this is where the generosity becomes sacrificial. So we know that the Macedonian church was what? They were in trial, they were being afflicted, they were in deep poverty, desperately poor, rock bottom. But they gave. You give him what you have, and you give him what is available to you. And sometimes we even give above and beyond what that is. So we can give of our 10%, we can give of what is within our means. And then sometimes the Lord prompts us to give above and beyond. And it is a sacrifice. It may be more than what we have for the month. It may be time that we don't have within that, whatever it is. But the Lord sometimes will draw us to give more of what we have, and he meets us in that space. And we read this in a little bit. I'll read it it's 12 and in 13. So it says, Paul is telling them, whatever you give is acceptable if you give it eagerly, and give according to what you have, not what you don't have. So he's not asking you to be unreasonable. Of course, I don't mean giving should make life easy for others or hard for yourselves. I only mean that there should be some equality. And right now you have plenty, and you can help those who are in need. And later, they will have plenty and can share with you when you need it. If you remember in the devotionals prior, Pastor Rini was reminding us that the church in Corinth was a very wealthy church. So they weren't without need, not like what was happening with the Macedonian church. And so Paul is using the Macedonian church as an example that they are going above and beyond, and they didn't even have what they had to give. And the Corinthian church has a ton to be able to give. They are sitting in a good space to be able to help another church who is in need. And so generosity is sacrificial. But we also read, just in reading in these scriptures right now, that our hardship, that our affliction, that when we're in the deepest spots of poverty, what happens? We throw grace into there. We throw God's love into there, this unmerited favor, and it turns into this joy, this overwhelming sense of being giving and generous. So number 3, third quality of generosity is volitional. Volitional just means that it's freely giving. It's by my own will. Good morning, Rosalie. Thanks for joining in. So generosity is volitional, freely given. I told you that the Macedonian church surprised Paul because he said, I'm not going to go ahead and receive offering from you. I see the hardship and what's happening. But this is what they do. Let me get here. Verse 4, 8:4, and it says, for I can testify that they not only gave of what they could afford, but they gave far more. and they did it of their own free will. Verse 4, they begged us again and again for the privilege of sharing in the gift for the believers in Jerusalem. So you have the Macedonian church that is facing opposition, that is facing struggle, that they're deeply, it says deep poverty that they are in. And yet, Paul is using them as an example to the Corinthian church of what they chose to do. He didn't even ask them, like I mentioned, he wasn't even going to take an offering from them to take to Jerusalem. They are actually begging Paul to be involved. They're begging Paul to allow them to give an offering to take to the sister church that's hurting in Jerusalem out of where they are, which is amazing. So they give above and beyond what they don't even have. How it can't help but be seen that that has to be grace. It has to be a change of heart, like what we read in verse 1 of what God had done, what Jesus had done in the hearts of those in the Macedonian church, that because of his great grace, the response is this, and what they choose to do and give, like we mentioned, as a cheerful giver. They're not upset about it. They're just begging him, please let us help. Please let us be a part of what is happening to help another church. And the last one, 4, the fourth quality of generosity is consequential. It follows after the effect of something else. So the Macedonians gave far more than money. It says here in verse 5 through 6 and 7, it says, they even did more than what we had hoped, for their first action was to give themselves to the Lord and to us, just as God wanted them to do. So it wasn't even about giving of their financial needs, you're saying, and giving of the offering. What did they first and foremost do? The Macedonian church gave themselves to God wholeheartedly. They submitted to who he was and acknowledged who he was. And then they gave themselves to Paul and his ministry team of spreading the gospel, and they wanted to get involved with that. This is a quote that I heard from another pastor that preaches at a Calvary church down in the SoCal area, but it says, you can't give your substance to the purpose of God until you first give yourself to the person of God. Meaning that if God has me, then he has all that I have. He even said in his little message that he was talking about, and it was a little bit harsh, but he made a comment after that too, that if I'm okay with it, it wouldn't bother me. But the word was, so if God has me, then he has all I have. If God has me, then he has my wallet. If God has me, then he has my bank account. If God has me, then he really does have everything that I have. And I want to be generous with that. And so he just kind of made the comment that we really should be okay with that as believers of Jesus, because we know the God that is in control, right? And so those are our 4 qualities today of generosity. 1, generosity is a signal, right? It's a response of what's happening in your heart, how God is transforming you. 2, generosity is sacrificial. It goes above and beyond sometimes, but we do it with a cheerful heart. 3, generosity is volitional. It is free giving. I don't have to be begged to do it. I just want to do it out of what the Lord is doing in my heart. And the last one, generosity is consequential. It is following after a result of what the Lord is doing in my life and knowing who is in charge. And I will leave you with this quote to close our time. It is from John Wesley. And it says, do all the good you can by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever as you can. So today, would that be us as followers of Jesus, that we would be a generous people because we have a generous God who by his grace compels us out of love, out even in the face of opposition and struggle and whatnot. Whatever we're facing today, we have grace that was given that moves us out of joy to be the most generous people on the planet. Well, I love you guys. I'm praying for you. Don't forget to like and share this with somebody today that could use some encouragement. Invite someone to join you to read the Bible in a year with us. And we will see you tomorrow at 7:47. All right. Love you guys. See you later.